On September 5th, former President Donald Trump spoke to the Economics Club of New York. What I want to do is go through one of the questions that was asked, and let's see whether or not Trump is actually able to answer the question. So here we go.
Thank you, Mr. President, for all the details on your economic policy. As you alluded to, tariffs are the other side of sanctions.
Okay, if you go back and listen, he doesn't give much economics or much details on any of his economic policies, but I'll skip that.
And given that China is our major trading partner with our largest imbalance and possibly our chief national security threat to the United States, how can we better institutionalize trade policy and national security policy to be coordinated?
Okay, this question is going to be a little too tough for the former president. So if I was going to dumb it down to like for an 8th grader, I would ask him, hey, sir, you know, what kind of trading rules could we set up that would ensure our country is safe, especially with a country like China, who's not always going to think about our best interests? So let's see how he answers this question.
So I had a great relationship with President Xi of China, really very close relationship. Now, look, he likes China. I like.
So he starts off with talking about, he's emphasizing his personal relationship with President Xi. However, personal relationships doesn't equate to institutionalizing policy. Effective trade and national security strategies goes far beyond personal relationships. It's not about, you know, who your friend is. It's about creating a framework that is long-term for our nation's interests.
Gus, so, but I don't want to sound foolish. He was my dear, dear friend. He's a tough guy. He's a fierce person. I say very smart. You know, when you say he's smart, the fake news goes crazy. He said President Xi is smart. And I say, yeah, well, he controls 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. He's smart. But we had a very good relationship with China until COVID. And when that came in, it was a whole different ballgame as far as I was concerned.
So at this point in time, I guess Trump's going to recognize the authoritarian governance of China. I mean, and this can pose issues when it comes to trade negotiations. But again, we're not hearing about how he's going to institutionalize trade policy in order to support our national security interests. Trade deals are not one-off things. It's about establishing a long-term framework well beyond when a president leaves.
You know, we made a great China trade deal, maybe better than the USMCA, and I'd never talk about it because what happened with COVID for the whole world, $60 trillion and, you know, deaths, 70 million, 60, nobody even knows how many deaths. And it all came out of Wuhan. So
now the focus on COVID-19, it's relevant to the global dynamics. However, it doesn't answer the broader question of trade policy and national security interests. Effective policy needs to be able to anticipate disruptions, whether from pandemics or other global challenges. A real leader would talk about strengthening supply chains and not about sourcing goods solely from a potential hostile country.
Changed my relationship, but I think I'll have a great relationship with China. I had one before, and they respected us, but they respected us because they no longer thought we were fools. They used to think we were fools because we built China. They would take over $500 billion a year and use it for their military and other things, and we got nothing out of that. We got some cheap product. You can buy 19 pencils instead of 2. Who the hell cares? You can buy 16 dolls for your daughter instead of 2 nice dolls. And we got very little out of that relationship.
So a $500 billion trade imbalance with China, it's a legitimate concern. But tariffs alone aren't the solution. A comprehensive strategy might include negotiating fair trade agreements, enforcing intellectual property rights, and investing in domestic interests.
They got a tremendous military power, and they still have it today. So, but I believe we will have a very good relationship with China and with a lot of other countries that we're not getting along with too well today. And things are going to straighten out. We're going to get them straightened out very quickly. Very important that we get along with the rest of the world. You know, we have things today called nuclear weapons. I rebuilt our whole military, including our nuclear capability.
This pivot to nuclear weapons seems completely out of place when talking about trade policy. The question was how to integrate economic and security interests. What we need are strategies that protect industries, technologies, and intellectual property from foreign exploitation, not some irrelevant discussion about military might.
And so I got very familiar with it. And, I say this often because I had an uncle who was the longest serving, I believe the longest serving, I was told that by MIT, but he was there 39, I guess, or 41 years, longest serving professor in the history of MIT, and nuclear was something he knew a lot about. And we used to talk about it. I'd say, Uncle John, there's no way. He was telling me about this incredible power that was being unleashed potentially.
So the whole idea that Trump sitting down with Uncle John, it's just, to me, is just humorous. Now, hey, John Trump, legit scientist, MIT professor, so that's factual. But a young Trump, as he's like talking with a kid's voice, talking about nuclear energy, what would this have been, like the 1960s, something like that? Somewhere between 50 and 60. I don't know. That's just kind of funny.
And I say, Uncle John, you could never. And you know what? He was very modest, because I've seen the destructive capability, and this world is going to have to get along, because if that's ever unleashed, we already have too many countries that have at least remnants of it, some of it, but probably 5 countries if you.
And then, if you want to talk about the number of countries that are known to have nuclear weapon systems, that's 9. If you want to know the number of countries that have nuclear capabilities for like power and so forth, that's 30. You would think the former president of the United States would just have those numbers rolling off his tongue.
And Kim Jong-un, when I went to the White House after winning in 2016, I sat with President Obama, which is a ritual, and you sit and you talk, and I said, what's the biggest problem?
So the digression into North Korea doesn't add anything to the discussion when it comes to trade policy. While North Korea is indeed a security threat, but the discussion here ought to be about China and how trade relationships don't undermine our national security interests.
Which is a ritual. And you sit and you talk, and I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea is the biggest problem. I don't think it's solvable. I said, have you tried calling him or talking to him? And actually, the answer was yes, and he wasn't responded to. But I did, and we were very safe. It started off a little rocky, if you remember. Little Rocket Man, I called him, and he called me things too. He's got a red button on his desk. I said, I have a bigger red button, and my red button works. I said, and then it started getting a little nicer, and then one day I got a call that they'd like to meet, and it was a great thing. We had a great meeting. We had 2 meetings, actually 2 great meetings, summits, and we had no problem with them. Now they have a problem because they're not liking this administration.
So Trump implies here that having a tough personality solves international issues. However, foreign policy requires consistent, well-thought-out strategies with strong institutions that can respond to dynamic changes, not who you can buddy with. It's not about being tough, it's being about smart and deliberate.
They don't respect this administration at all. So we have to get along. We have to get along. We can't have World War III. You're going to end up in World War III. Just like you should have never had Russia go in. It would have never happened if a competent person led us. It would have never happened. He led them into it. And I'm not blaming Biden. But you know what? What he was saying was exactly the wrong thing. I said, we're going to have an invasion because of a lot of the rhetoric. It was stupid rhetoric. But it would have never happened, not only for that reason. Oil was down low. Oil was almost at $100 a barrel. So Putin is one of the only people. I mean, nothing's easy in life. But Putin at $100 a barrel, war works. At $40 a barrel, it didn't work at all. So we're going to get back to a intelligently run place, a place where other countries aren't using the word nuclear. That word was never talked about because I knew the power of it.
Again, we see a diversion into military power. Trade policy and national security integration requires clear measures like export controls, investment screening, and ensuring that the critical industries are protected from foreign influence. This isn't about who has a bigger red button. This is about economic policies ensuring that they protect American interests.
And I talked to Putin about it. I talked to President Xi about it.
So he's correct. I mean, engaging with foreign leaders is essential. But effective policy requires more than just one-on-one conversations. It requires building strong alliances, enforcing trade rules, and creating policies that protect our national security interests, regardless of who's in power.
I think we were going to do, you remember the talk where we were going to reduce nuclear capability substantially. All three of us, we're going to start it, we're going to reduce very substantially. And then we had the election, and after the election, they didn't talk about that or anything else, frankly. But we have to be very, very careful because the destructive capability of nuclear.
Again, the question was about trade policy, not nuclear weapons. The real threat here is economic. The dependence on foreign nations for critical goods, technological theft, and supply chain vulnerabilities. That's where the focus should be if we're serious about coordinating trade policies and national security policies.
When people talk about global warming, I say the ocean is going to go down 1/100th of an inch within the next 400 years. That's not our problem.
Wait a minute. The ocean's going down, what do you say, a quarter inch over the next 400 years? No, I think the actual numbers is that the ocean's going to go up between 2020 and 2050 by about 10 to 12 inches. So I think that he's confused. But if you're going to deny climate change, you might as well deny it like this.
Our problem is nuclear warming, and we better be smart, and we better have smart people at the top that know how to deal, because these people don't know how to deal. Putin came out today, he endorsed Kamala, and I didn't know, was I supposed to call him up and say, thank you very much, I appreciate it?
This comment adds nothing to the trade policy discussion. So instead of focusing in on political distractors, let's get back to the essential issue. Building a trade policy that protects American jobs, technology, and national security.
But he endorsed Kamala. I have a feeling, I don't know. I don't know exactly what to say about that. I don't know if I'm insulted or he did me a favor. But we have to get along with the world. We can't have war because the destructive capability, you can be the head of the biggest bank wherever the hell Jamie is sitting. You can be the head of the biggest bank in the world, and a couple of nukes and your bank doesn't mean a thing. You gotta get along. This is such an important job. It's a dangerous job too. Very dangerous job. If you look at statistically, being president is very dangerous. That throbbing feeling I have. Oh, that throbbing feeling. No, it's a very dangerous job, and you have to do it right. And if you don't do it right, bad things will happen to the world. Things like you've never seen before. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the former president concludes with vague warnings about doing the job right. But doing it right means crafting detailed, actionable strategies for trade and security policy. It means negotiating trade agreements that are fair and enforceable, investing in domestic industries, and protecting our nation from economic threats. Well, as you can see, he did not answer the original question of how do we synchronize our trade policy with our security policies. He spoke exclusively about personal experiences and global relations. He failed to address the core issue, how to institutionalize trade policy to align with national security. I'd argue that our focus should be on building resilient, enforceable trade frameworks that protect our national interests, rather than relying on personal relationships or broad generalities. We need policies that are smart, strategic, and capable of adapting to a rapidly changing global environment. So all in all, I would give Trump about a 0 out of 10 when it comes to actually answering the question. Idiocracy 101. Again, I don't think that Trump understands the basic question. How do you synchronize our trade policies with our national security interests? Thanks for watching.